whatever. I think a Claymore lightsaber looks badass. Beyond that, I'm actually more interested in a trailer that actually showed us some of what its movie is supposed to be about. Okay, so I honestly thought the prospect of a mutant hybrid dinosaur as the new villain and velociraptors fighting alongside the good guys would piss people off. I'm not 100% sure why, I just figured they would. These days, the more I like something, the more it seems like the rest of the world wants to tell me how lame it is. What I didn't expect was for paleontology buffs, and that curious segment of the internet that loves nothing more than to see science wasting its valuable time nitpicking action movies, to get massively bent out of shape about a lack of realism in the film's dinosaur design. Specifically, the issue is that an increasingly prominent school of thought has taken hold in the years between the original Jurassic Park and today, positing that as dinosaurs are the genetic ancestors of modern birds, many of the species prominently featured in the Jurassic Park films likely sported some degree of feathers and generally looked a lot less reptilian than they were traditionally depicted back when science assumed they were in fact reptiles. So goes the argument Jurassic World, as part of the franchise that more or less sets the standard for pop culture's collective vision of dinosaurs, should lead from the front on taking the feathered look mainstream. I am very much on the other side of that. Viscerally, in fact. I have a powerful, potent, rage-filled disdain for the whole feathered dinosaur concept, and I don't want it anywhere near a potentially awesome new Jurassic Park movie. I don't care if it's scientifically correct, I don't care if it would be educational, I don't care. I like my dinosaurs to look more like badass real-life dragons than they do like a parrot that was raised near Chernobyl. And I recognize how stupid and childish and anti-intellectual that is, absolutely. It's not as though I want to argue with the science, I know better than that. I can accept that the science is probably right, I just, selfishly, yes, want to hold on to the cool version of dinosaurs as long as I can. Look, I grew up at the tail end of the era where science fiction was still mainly about coming up with really cool stuff and then working out a scientific justification for its existence, and science fact seemed to largely be promising, or delivering on the promise of making those visions a reality. Things have changed, and I've got to get used to a lot of sobering truisms. I will probably not be getting my jetpack. At least not the kind I want. There's probably not a plesiosaur living in Loch Ness. My life will probably not be extended by the transplant of human brains into superior cybernetic bodies. And even as I remain in favor of pumping every federal dollar possible into the space program, it's unlikely we're ever going to get to Star Trek within my lifetime. Dinosaurs being more conceptually awesome than the Rancor, the Alien, and the Gillman put together, and also being real, as in as awesome in reality as they were in movies and books, was the last thing about the real world that wasn't objectively better in fiction, and now there's not even that. And you know what? Fine. I'm a man of science. I accept it. You win. But can I at least keep Jurassic Park? Is it too much to ask that a movie be permitted to continue using the awesome, scaly lizard monster version of dinosaurs instead of the crummy, fluffy mutant chicken version? Please? Now, what bugs me about my own feelings on this matter is that they sound, when looked at from the outside, not all that dissimilar to another movie controversy that's coming to a head somewhat more visibly, namely the issue of race and casting in Ridley Scott's upcoming blockbuster Exodus. If you're not familiar, the film is yet another retelling of the biblical story of Moses leading the Israelites out of ancient Egypt. Like most films made on the subject, most famously Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments in 1956, the film has overwhelmingly cast Caucasian and or generally light-skinned actors as both Egyptians and ancient Hebrews. Unlike The Ten Commandments, well, this ain't 1956. It's both more academically and culturally established that persons living in that part of Africa, even back then, probably did not look much like Charlton Heston, or Christian Bale. Now, there's a lot of pushback in both directions on that one, complicated by the fact that there's historical evidence in the era suggesting that Egypt was a multi-ethnic society to a degree, and we actually don't know what the ancient Hebrews would have looked like in that era, period. Though, again, not like Christian Bale is probably a pretty good guess. But what it comes down to is that people have conceptions about history and stories that they've internalized to a certain degree, and they get touchy about challenges to the validity of their preferred version, even when faced with obvious evidence to the contrary. Now, obviously, I don't think my admittedly silly stubbornness about feathered dinosaurs is in any way as egregious as literally whitewashing history, mostly in that my hang-up isn't part of a century upon century of systemic denial of existence and achievement to whole groups of people based on outdated concepts of racial superiority, but it is worth thinking about in the broader context of nostalgic attachment to incorrect and or problematic notions versus the negatives of their continued perpetuation today. Sure, I might have a nostalgia attachment to the classic version of the Mandarin, but would preserving that into the Iron Man movies in the 21st century have been worth the continued caricaturing of Asian people that he kinda represents? See also figures like Gollywog, Black Peter, or even maybe Mr. Popo? These are things worth considering, especially now that we live in an information age whereby time doesn't allow things to recede into memory like they used to. I still don't like feathers on my T-Rex though, that I just can't take. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.